hockey fans, welcome back for another edition of Bubble Wrap presented by Coors Light. Thank you for tuning in, ladies and gentlemen. I am Nick Hart, coming to you live from the Lockdown Lounge, appearing on many screens across the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins' many social media pages. I will be your chaperone for this excursion through the landscape of what is left in the Stanley Cup Playoffs. Folks, we have made it down to one bubble. We have reached the conference finals of these 2020 Stanley Cup Playoffs. Only 4 teams left, and what started as an unprecedented tournament to crown a Stanley Cup champion in what has been a unique year, to say the least. Before we take a closer examination at the Final Four and bring you all the other thrilling analysis that you're used to here on Bubble Wrap, let me remind you, good people out there, that because we are live on the Penguins social media pages, feel free to leave us a comment during the stream. We love to get you fans, you loyal viewers, involved in the conversation. There's one right now, so drop us a line. Maybe your comment will be shown on screen during today's show, just like Zane Cruz. Hi, Zane. Thanks for watching, buddy. Also, the phone lines for the Hockey Heartline remain open as always, so get your calls in. And lastly, we'll have some fun news for you Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins fans coming up later in the show as well. You're definitely going to want to stick around for that. But enough waiting, ladies and gentlemen. Let's talk hockey. Let's talk about the conference finals. A trio of Game 7s took place since the last time we chatted it up here on a Bubble Wrap Wednesday. Philadelphia, Colorado, and Vancouver lost those Game 7s. Therefore, the New York Islanders, Dallas Stars, and Vegas Golden Knights joined the Tampa Bay Lightning in the final field of 4. This is what the bracket looks like now. We've made it to this point, shaved it down from a play-in round to a field of 16. Kick 8 teams out. We're in the conference semifinals now. Slash that in half to the final 4. In the Eastern Conference, the Islanders playing the Lightning, and in the Western Conference, the Golden Knights taking on the Dallas Stars. And for our series breakdowns, let's start with some East Coast bias and begin with the Eastern Conference final, the aforementioned Islanders-Lightning series. And for New York Islanders fans, they came into this series ready to party like it's 1993. That was the last time the New York Islanders even made it to the conference final in the Stanley Cup playoffs, way back in 1993. And, well, there's a little bit of symmetry between the way things happened for the Islanders in 93 and how they're happening this year in 2020. Back in 1993, in the second round, the 6th-seeded Islanders defeated the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference, the Pittsburgh Penguins, in 7 games in order to advance to the conference final. Well, this past year, in the second round, the 6th-seeded Islanders defeated the other Keystone State team, the number 1 seeded Philadelphia Flyers, and it also took 7 games to propel the New York Islanders to that conference final this year. They're partying it up like it's 1993, like I said, but they were looking for a different result than what happened back in 1993. The Islanders lost to the Montreal Canadiens, who ultimately went on to win the Stanley Cup this year, or that year, I should say. This year, the party didn't last long for the Islanders and their fans because the Tampa Bay Lightning shattered the celebration with an emphatic win in Game 1, setting the tone early in this series with an 8-2 victory over the Isles. That is not a typo on our graphic, ladies and gentlemen. The Lightning filled the Islanders' net with 8 goals. The Islanders, you could even say, may have been a bit lucky to generate 2 goals in that contest, but stealing the show for the Tampa Bay Lightning as part of that 8-goal outburst. Braden Point, their number 1 centerman. Call him Braden Point. 5 points for Braden Point, all primary points with 2 goals and 3 primary assists in that game. A brilliant showing from their number 1 centerman. Not too shabby either. Nikita Kucherov also with 5 points, tying a franchise high with 4 assists in a single game. And this was the big, unbelievable stat at the end of the night. Good for the individuals, Braden Point and Nikita Kucherov. But the team overall, Tampa Bay was recorded as having 35 unblocked shot attempts. they had 34 shots on goal. Tampa Bay missed the net only one time in the entire game. Try and wrap your head around that, ladies and gentlemen. Furthermore, their only missed shot came in the 58th minute of the game. It was in garbage time that they missed the net. They almost went an entire 60 minutes of a hockey game without missing the net a single time. Granted, you have to factor in there were about a dozen New York Islanders shot blocks in there, but the way the NHL records it, those unblocked shot attempts that get at least towards the goal, only one missed the net. 35 attempts, 34 shots on goal. That has never happened before. Certainly not in a playoff game. Just goes to show you how precise and how dominant the Tampa Bay Lightning were in that Game 1 victory over the New York Islanders. But the Islanders will have a chance to even things up, set the record straight. The Tampa Bay Lightning don't get to start Game 2 with all 8 of those goals from Game 1 whenever they take off in their second game of this Eastern Conference Final Series tonight. 8 p.m., ladies and gentlemen, you can tune in to see Game 2 of this Eastern Conference Final Series, and they're playing every other day for pretty much the rest of this conference final, Wednesday to Friday to Sunday to Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, if necessary, games 5, 6, and 7. But with the way the Lightning were cooking in that first game, I'm not sure how long this series will last. The Islanders have been a tough team to beat so far in these playoffs, but in fact, the stingiest defensive team to make it this far in the postseason as well. But with the way the Lightning just casually put up 8 goals against a team as structurally sound and as defensively responsible as the Islanders, that might not bode well for the future. But like I said, hey, if you're an Islanders fan, it only counts as one win for Tampa Bay. They don't get to start the next games building up all of those goals. It's 0-0 when they drop the puck later tonight. Now let's shift our attention to the Western Conference Final. This series already 2 games deep, as yesterday night the Vegas Golden Knights were able to tie the series with a victory. So 1 win apiece out in the Western Conference Final between the Dallas Stars and the Vegas Golden Knights. Vegas, the number 1 overall seed, perhaps expected to make it this far. But as far as their opponent, it's been a somewhat surprising road traveled for Dallas to make it here. Not only did the Stars receive a Game 7 hat trick from rookie Yoel Kiviranta, including an overtime game winner from the rookie as part of that hat trick, they used that performance to advance to the Western Conference Final, a great story. But throughout the playoffs so far, Dallas has seen an unforeseen eruption of offense during the first 2 playoff rounds. We're calling it an astronomical outburst for Dallas. Look at their goals for per game stat from the regular season. A team that scored just 2.58 goals per game. That was 26 overall in the league and the second worst among all teams that ultimately qualified for the Stanley Cup Playoffs. Only the Columbus Blue Jackets had a lower goals for total in the regular season. Then the round robin stage of the bubble in Edmonton, whenever Dallas played St. Louis, Colorado, and Vegas, the other top-seeded teams from the Western Conference in the regular season, they scored even fewer goals, a paltry 1.67 goals per game. That ranked 22nd out of all the teams that made it to either the round robin or the play-in round games. So Dallas wasn't a team that scored a lot in the regular season. They scored even fewer goals in the round robin. And then you get to the first 2 playoff rounds and hold the phone. Here come the Dallas Stars, almost 4 goals per game on average in that series against the Calgary Flames and the Colorado Avalanche. That is the second most goals out of all the teams in the playoffs. Only the opponent that they defeated last round, the Colorado Avalanche, scored more on average in the first 2 playoff rounds. Granted, that trend of high-flying offense has stalled in the West Final against Vegas so far. A 1-0 shutout win for Dallas in Game 1, and then a 3-0 shutout loss at the hands of the Golden Knights in Game 2. And clean sheets have been the name of the game for Pete DeBoer's squad lately. Throughout the playoffs, the Vegas Golden Knights offense has been feast or famine. The number 1 overall seeded team in the Western Conference. The way that they've been playing so far, it's been either a big boost of offense from their side or they're struggling to score. Now, their defense has been solid throughout the playoffs. That's been a consistent. But you just look at what Vegas has done lately. Their last 4 games have ended in either a shutout win or a shutout loss. They either get a shutout or they are shut out. They beat Dallas last night 3-0. They lost to Dallas 1-0. They beat the Vancouver Canucks in Game 7 3-0. They lost to the Vancouver Canucks in a shutout loss. Furthermore, you extend this all the way back to the beginning of the round robin when the bubble started. Vegas has 8 games of scoring 4 or more goals. They also have 4 games scoring 1 or fewer goals. And if you really tap into the underlying numbers for the Vegas Golden Knights, it gets even more impressive. When you look at their expected goals per 60 minutes coming to us from naturalstattrick.com, a metric designed based on shot attempts, the dangerous area of shot attempts, and the scoring prowess of a given team. They put that all in a formula and spit out an expected goals rate of during 5-on-5 play, 2.92. That is the second best of all the teams in the playoffs. Their expected goals against their defense, the very best in the league. And then if you put the two together, their expected goals percentage, how much of the offense they're expected to create based on these underlying numbers, 63% of the expected goals also first. But sometimes those expected goals don't exactly generate. So when they're cooking with gas and firing on all cylinders, they're ready to leave you behind in the dust and shut you out, really suffocate you with that great defense. Sometimes, even though that defense has brought it to the table all the time, those expected goals don't necessarily materialize, and that has resulted in some of those low-scoring games for the Vegas Golden Knights as well. So they've been a feast or famine team so far throughout these playoffs, but they really do look like the cream of the crop. The underlying numbers suggest as much, and the way that they were able to bounce back against Dallas after that 1-0 loss really bodes well for Vegas in these playoffs. I mean, that Game 1 loss to Dallas may have been the only truly bad game Vegas has played in these playoffs. No, they didn't come into the series undefeated or anything like that, but normally it was, they were tired playing the game after a back-to-back, or they ran into a hot goalie like Thatcher Demko of the Vancouver Canucks. That Game 1 loss to the Stars, really the only game where Vegas didn't have the bulk of the possession, bulk of the shot attempts or scoring chances. Game 2, completely different story. Total domination by the Vegas Golden Knights. We'll see who pulls ahead in this Western Conference Series when they play Game 3 tomorrow night. Once again, 8 p.m. start times down the lane. So even though these games in the bubble happening out in the Mountain Time Zone, Edmonton, Alberta, they're putting it a little bit earlier for us good people on the East Coast, except for that Game 7. If it does go 7 games, that one will start at 9 p.m. That is far off in the distance, though. However, ladies and gentlemen, let's stay focused on where we're at right now as we take another look at the bracket. Down to 4 teams, Isles and Lightning. 1 game lead for the Lightning through 1 game. Isles trying to tie it up later tonight. And the Vegas Golden Knights and Dallas Stars, they too tied at 1 game apiece through 2 contests. Now, this is also a time where in Bubble Wrap, where we like to look at a performance of the week. Look at the guy who really stepped up the biggest for his squad in the week that was, and recap it here on a Bubble Wrap Wednesday. So we had a lot of candidates this past week, but we're not going with Thatcher Demko, who had another shutout for the now eliminated Vancouver Canucks. We're not even going with Joel Kiviranta, the young man who scored a hat trick in Game 7 for his team. Nope, and we're not even turning back the clock to 2 nights ago when Braden Point had that 5-point outing for the Tampa Bay Lightning. No, instead, our performance of the week belongs to one of the Philadelphia Flyers. It is Oskar Lindblom, and it's not about necessarily what he brought to the score sheet on September 3rd, but just the overall story surrounding Oskar Lindblom. The forward for the Flyers back on December 13th was diagnosed with Ewing sarcoma. He then had to go through a bunch of cancer chemotherapy treatments, and he completed his chemotherapy treatments in July. He was expected, whenever that diagnosis came down in December, to maybe be out for a full year, who knows, maybe even beyond that. However, on September 3rd, in Game 6 of their series against the New York Islanders, Lindblom returned to Philadelphia's lineup. He played over 17 minutes in that game as well. Fantastic stuff, a great story. Oskar Lindblom able to battle through Ewing sarcoma and all those chemotherapy treatments. His future was a little bit murky, but he fought his way back and not only just played hockey again, picked up the stick, put on the skates, he played in the Stanley Cup Playoffs. So a no-doubter performance of the week belonging to the Flyers forward and former Lehigh Valley Phantoms forward. He tormented the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins for a little bit there, but we all give a little tip of the cap to Oscar Lindblom for what he was able to pull off this summer. Now, we talk about a little bit more of the individual performers here in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Let's look at the playoff leaderboard so far, and we gave our performance of the week to a guy on an eliminated team. How about this? The goals, points, and save percentage leaders in the playoffs, all eliminated from the postseason right now. Bo Horvat of the Vancouver Canucks still atop the leaderboard with 10 goals, even though his team's out. Nate MacKinnon was having a spectacular playoffs, averaging just under 2 points per game. But even despite his 25 points leading the playoffs, the Avalanche and Nate MacKinnon were sent back home. For the goalies, last time we were here, we had a lot of eliminated goalies on this list, so I decided to make a little cutoff here. Only goalies that played a minimum of 600 minutes in the postseason were able to qualify for a playoff leaderboard. And even so, Montreal's Carey Price meets that threshold and leads all goaltenders with a .936 save percentage. Not too far behind, though, Tampa Bay Lightning goalie Andrei Vasilevskiy with a whopping .930 save percentage in this postseason. And Vasilevsky's teammate, Brayden Point, knocking on the door of Nate MacKinnon for the overall points lead. And with the way he's been able to light the lamp for Tampa Bay, I don't think it'll take very long for him to steal that top spot from the pride of Cole Harbour, Nova Scotia. Speaking of Brayden Point, he has taken the top spot from Nate MacKinnon in our Conn Smythe Power Rankings. For so long here on Bubble Wrap presented by Coors Light, we were calling these the far too early Conn Smythe Power Rankings. Now that we're at the conference final, feel a little bit more comfortable with these rankings. But we have some new entries to our top 7, especially with a bunch of teams getting eliminated. A no-doubter, clear-cut number 1 right now is Brayden Point with his 23 points and 2.99 expected goals per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. Dallas defenseman Miro Heiskanen is having himself a fantastic playoffs. If you haven't been watching the Western Conference games, hey, they moved the times up a little bit earlier now, and you'll be able to see just how smooth Miro Heiskanen is and how much he controls the game. 21 points from the blue line in these playoffs while averaging over 25 minutes a game. Victor Hedman, a dominant defenseman, always a Norris Trophy candidate, now a Conn Smythe candidate. 6 goals as a defenseman, including an overtime series clincher against the Boston Bruins. Climbing up the rankings, once again, Vegas Golden Knights defenseman Shea Theodore, who had another goal last night for Vegas, but it was taken away upon review for goaltender interference. Still, a whopping 6 goals for Theodore, and his goals per 60 minutes metric there, unbelievable, 3.64 at 5-on-5. That is the best among all defensemen in the playoffs, and second place isn't even close. So we have Brayden Point at the top, followed by 3 defensemen. Andrei Vasilevskiy, a new entry to our Conn Smythe Power Rankings. He was not ranked the last time around, but with an 11-3 record, a 1.91 goals against average, and that sensational .930 save percentage, despite the fact he hasn't had any shutouts these playoffs, I feel very, very comfortable moving him into the top 5 of our Conn Smythe rankings. Now you get down to the New York Islanders. Josh Bailey, he's a guy I mentioned is a little bit underrated, his performance in these playoffs, so I'm going to show him some love on our Conn Smythe Power Rankings. 15 assists, tied for the second most among all players in these playoffs. His underlying numbers aren't necessarily sensational. His possession metrics a little under 50%, but you know what? I'm putting Josh Bailey in here once again just to show him a little bit of love. This is the best hockey he's been playing in his career. Not sure how long he'll last in these rankings, much like Nathan MacKinnon, who, even though his team's been eliminated, I'm keeping him in the top 7 until someone can prove to me otherwise. 25 points, almost 2 points per game. It truly was a wonderful showing by Nathan MacKinnon. He's been one of those guys who's been on the cusp of being a star in the National Hockey League for a little bit. I mean, truly a household name superstar, not just for the super fans, but the casual fan as well. If hockey fans don't know the name Nate MacKinnon after these playoffs, then I'm not sure if they're really a hockey fan at all. Not sure how long he'll last in our Conn Smythe Power Rankings as we move on. It'd be hard to give the guy the MVP of the playoffs if his team only makes it 2 rounds deep. Furthermore, Robin Lehner probably knocking on his door after that win last night for Vegas. The Golden Knights goaltender now has 4 shutouts in these playoffs. 4 clean sheets for Robin Leonard. So I'm sure he'll be getting some love the next time we do the Conn Smythe Power Rankings as well. Still have some time here on this edition of Bubble Wrap presented by Coors Light. But in the meantime, I want to tell you, faithful Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins fans, that there's still plenty of Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins content coming up. Of course, you can buy the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins mask and plenty of other Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins merchandise. Rep the black and gold by visiting the WBS Penguins website, WBSPenguins.com, and go into the shop tab. Furthermore, we have some stories up on the website right now on how the Penguins have basically influenced all of the Pittsburgh Penguins coaching staff right here. It's a proverbial pipeline, not just for the players to go from northeastern Pennsylvania out to the Steel City, but it also works that way behind the scenes in the coaching office as well. Furthermore, now former Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins head coach Mike Vellucci finally getting his first look in the NHL. You can check all that stuff out on WBSPenguins.com. Normally, we have an episode of From the Vault, Penguins games from the archives, games from Penguins past being played on our social media pages on Thursday. We're subbing that out for something a little bit different. Tomorrow, mentioned before, former Penguin Barry Goers is going to be appearing on this upcoming season of American Ninja Warrior on NBC. Well, the season started last Monday, no B-goatee. But we know now that next Monday you can turn into NBC and watch Barry Goers perform on American Ninja Warrior. And so tomorrow night, 7 p.m., me and Barry Goers will be going one-on-one with a little live interview. We'll ask him about how in the world he got involved in American Ninja Warrior. Of course, I'm sure that's been taking up a lot of his time post-hockey retirement. But, hey, I can't wait for this chat with Barry Goers, and I definitely can't wait to see him on American Ninja Warrior this upcoming Monday. I know I'm going to be sitting on my couch cheering on the former Penguins D-man, and you can hear from him personally once again with that live interview going up tomorrow, 7 p.m. right here on the Penn social media pages as well. A little one-on-one with Barry Goers. He was quite adept at defending the one-on-one when he was patrolling the blue line for Wilkes-Barre Scranton. Hopefully he takes it a little bit easy on me on that interview tomorrow. Well, I don't want you fans to take it easy on me now. I mentioned before that we were taking your calls for the Hockey Heartline, and I guess now's a good a time as any to open up those phone lines. It is now time for the Hockey Heartline, where I like to get in touch with the fans, understand what the people are thinking. What do the people want to know about? What do they want to talk about? Let you guys steer the conversation, and I can give you the answers accordingly. So now I guess the phone lines have been going up, lighting up off the hook. I see all the bells and whistles in front of me, the lights blinking, things like that. So if you want to get your call in, call that number below. But now let's go right away to Tony in Uniondale. Oh, I think I remember this name. Tony in Uniondale, what do you have for us?
Hi, Nick, it's Tony. I'm calling again. Last time I said you weren't giving the Islanders enough credit.
Yes, I remember you, Tony. I remember you very well.
All right, well, I'm calling again. I still don't think you're showing enough love to the New York Islanders, but you know what? I'm not going to pretend that things went all that well for my beloved Isles in that first game against the Tampa Bay Lightning. They took a shellacking, Nick. I know, I understand you don't need to remind me, but my level of concern has raised significantly watching the way Matt Barzal was freaking out during the game. Did you see that, Nick? He was slamming his stick off the glass. He was going absolutely crazy. I just want to make sure that, everything's going to be okay. I don't like seeing the star players freak out like that. It's only one game, I understand, but give me a reason to be happy right now, Nick, because I'm kind of freaking out here. If they're freaking out, I'm freaking out. Should I be freaking out?
Okay, Tony. Thank you for the call again. Tony in Uniondale, ladies and gentlemen. I don't think there's really that much of a reason to freak out, or at least seeing the way Matt Barzal responded. The play I think Tony is referring to was played multiple times on the NBCSN broadcast of that game one against the Tampa Bay Lightning, where the star youngster for the New York Islanders, future of the franchise, if I do say so myself, came back to the bench after a tough shift against the Lightning. Lord knows there were many tough shifts against Tampa Bay for the Islanders in that game. But he came back and he was slamming his stick off the glass. If you're a hockey fan, you know that happens every now and then. Players get frustrated. They kick the boards. They slam the stick off their boards. Now, this was a very animated display of frustration for Matt Barzal. They paid it a lot of attention on the broadcast, but to quell your nerves, Tony, my level of concern on this is rather low. As I said before, it's sort of a regular display of frustration for teams to do players on certain teams to do this. Furthermore, what the New York Islanders have behind the bench that maybe other frustrated players don't get to work with is head coach in Barry Trotz. Now, Barry Trotz had to work a long, long time to finally lift the Stanley Cup whenever he did so with Washington a few years ago. But throughout his career, even before he won that Stanley Cup title, players who played for Barry Trotz always talked about how much they appreciated him as a communicator. Yes, he plays a stingy defensive style. Yes, he demands a tight structure to be played by his team, but he wasn't known as a taskmaster. He was known as a guy who knew how to get the most out of his players by forming personal relationships with those guys, knowing how to work with individual personalities as a result. So I imagine a young guy like Matt Barzal, he can be guided by Barry Trotz, calm down, or Barry Trotz can talk to him and try and either channel that frustration into something positive here in game 2, or just calm him down, hit the reset button. Barry Trotz is one of those coaches who I think can handle a situation like that better than anyone else in the entire National Hockey League. My level of concern as an Islanders fan would be a little bit more towards how in the world we're going to score more goals than the Tampa Bay Lightning on a regular basis, because Tampa is rolling. They are rolling. I wouldn't be worried so much about how much Matt Barzal slams the glass. Let's go on to our second caller now here on the Hockey Hart line. We'll throw it out to the West Coast now. This is a call coming from Larry in Las Vegas. Larry, you're on the air.
Robin Lehner had his 4th shutout yesterday.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did, Larry.
Marc-Andre Fleury. He's the face of the franchise, but he's not playing.
No, he is not.
Who would you play? Lehner or Fleury? Goodbye.
Okay, goodbye, Larry in Las Vegas. That was unsettling. Not be concerned. Maybe we'll have to keep an eye out to see if we see Larry in Las Vegas on the news at all coming up. But the question Larry is asking is Robin Lehner or Marc-Andre Fleury in net for the Vegas Golden Knights. Knights coach Pete DeBoer has clearly made his decision. He's been rolling with Robin Lehner throughout these playoffs, but this seems to be a debate topic all across the NHL for some reason. It certainly has been so just about every time the Vegas Golden Knights play on NBC. They're always talking before or after a game, who would you play next game, Lehner or Fleury? Who would you play next game, Lehner or Fleury? Listen, you're not going to find a bigger Marc-Andre Fleury fanboy than myself, but the decision here isn't nearly as 50-50 as people are making it sound. I've had these numbers written out for me for a while now, just in case this question came up on the Hockey Heartline. These are updated after the shutout Robin Lehner had last night, but let's just go to the regular season statistics. We'll look at both Fleury and Robin Lehner. Fleury's goals against average in the regular season was 2.77. Robin Lehner's was 2.89, so a slight edge there to Marc-Andre Fleury. Fleury posted 5 shutouts in the regular season. Lehner had only 1. But now you look at the save percentage. Marc-Andre Fleury, 905, his save percentage. Robin Lehner, 920 in the regular season. Fleury had 27 wins among the tops in the NHL, whereas Lehner only had 19. But that's more of a result as the lack of run support and the porous defense that was playing in front of Lehner when he was in Chicago before he got traded to Vegas. So you just look at the save percentage, a massive edge there to Robin Lehner. Now let's look at the playoff stats. Pete DeBoer made his decision. He gave more starts to Robin Lehner, and they seem to have paid off because Robin Lehner's playoff save percentage, 924. Marc-Andre Fleury's save percentage, 910. Robin Lehner's playoff goals against average, 1.84. Fleury's playoff goals against average, 2.27. 4 shutouts in the playoffs so far for Robin Lehner. No clean sheets for Marc-Andre Fleury, though he may have gotten the short end of the stick in that 1-0 loss. He played very well for Vegas in that Game 1 against the Dallas Stars. The team just didn't score any goals in front of him. Marc-Andre Fleury at this point, great goalie. As Larry in Las Vegas said, he was the face of the franchise when the night started. He might still be the face of the franchise, despite the fact that he's not the starting goalie. But there's no way in the world you can take Robin Lehner out of that net. I know there's been some weird scheduling things with The bubbles this season, you have to play some back-to-back starts. That's when Fleury's gotten some love from Pete DeBoer. But, hey, I'm not going away from Robin Lehner, and it doesn't look like Pete DeBoer is at this point either. I'm a big Marc-Andre Fleury fan, but right now he's maybe the best insurance policy a team has left in these playoffs in net, because Robin Lehner, you're not taking the net away from a guy who has a .924 save percentage, 1.84 goals against average, and 4 shutouts, all just in these playoffs. A little bit of time left here on the Hockey Heartline, so let's throw it out to one last caller. Let's give it to Nick in Pittsburgh. Nick, go ahead.
Yes, hello, Nick. Am I on?
Yes, Nick, you're on the air.
Okay, thanks, Nick. So I've been watching what the Tampa Bay Lightning have been doing so far in these playoffs, especially with that convincing Game 1 victory against the Islanders in Game 1 of the conference final. And it's got me to thinking, Tampa's been able to do this all along without the aid of Steven Stamkos, their captain, a franchise leader in goals, a guy who's always in the running for the Rocket Richard Trophy as the guy who would lead the league in goals at the end of the season. He hasn't been around for this entire run. He's been injured since before the stoppage. Now, he might come back. Tampa's been playing that card pretty close to their vest, I know. But my question to you, Nick, is if Stamkos were to come back, where would you slide him in this lineup that has gotten Tampa Bay to this point already? Thanks, Nick. I'll hang up and listen.
All right. Thanks for the call, Nick. And yes, that's been something that's been on my mind as well. Steven Stamkos, now, Lightning head coach John Cooper has already said, hey, don't expect Steven Stamkos back in these conference finals. He had core muscle surgery back in early March, I believe, even before the league shut down. They were looking like they weren't going to get him back for the playoffs at all, but because of the delay, the stoppage, and then the comeback, almost every round it's been, is Stamkos coming back? Is Stamkos coming back? Is Stamkos coming back? People haven't been overly concerned about it lately because the Tampa Bay Lightning just keep on clicking. But if Stamkos is available either later in this conference final and John Cooper is just trying to throw us off the scent a little bit, or even get him back for the Stanley Cup final, where do you put number 91 in the Tampa Bay Lightning lineup? So let's take a quick examination of the lines of the Tampa Bay Lightning here. So you're not breaking up that top line at all. Braden Point, Andre Palat, and Nikita Kucherov. I know it might be tempting to put Stamkos in Palat's spot on that top line with Point and Kucherov, but Andre Palat is sort of a chug engine for that top line, gets in hard on the forecheck, wins a lot of pucks, and is great for retrieval so that Kucherov and Point can then work their magic as a result. And you're definitely not breaking up that grind line, that third line, Yanni Gourde, Barclay Goodrow, and Blake Coleman, whose praises we have sang earlier in these playoffs as well. So that kind of leaves you with the option either tinker with the second line or the fourth line. Now you see an X there on the right wing on the fourth line. That's because John Cooper has lately been playing 7 defensemen instead of 12 forwards for the Tampa Bay Lightning. So there is potentially an open spot there. Steven Stamkos being a right-handed shot as well. But with a player with as much offensive talent as Steven Stamkos, do you really want to just stick him down on the fourth line? Cedric Paquette and Pat Maroon don't exactly play a ton of minutes. What I would do if I were John Cooper, and let me make it clear, I am not. There's a reason he's a head coach in the National Hockey League, and I'm just sitting here on Twitter and YouTube waxing intellectual. But I would put Steven Stamkos on that fourth line, either fourth line center or fourth line on the right wing, just so that he can get his legs underneath him. You don't demand a whole heck of a lot from him in terms of offense. You just let him get used to playing again, get his game lungs back under him. You know, it's one thing to skate laps in practice or work hard in the gym, completely different to get back into game shape as a player. Furthermore, the old adage, when players get back into the lineup after a long time off, they want to take a hit and give a hit. There's nowhere better to do that than on the fourth line. You would not keep him there, though. I would move him up to left wing on the second line, taking Alex Killorn's spot there on the second line after he gets reacclimated to playing on the fourth line. Once he starts to feel good, you move him up. Now, that would be his offhand side. He is a right-handed shot, and I'd be sticking him on the left wing, not even his natural position of center. But Stamkos has played wing in the past, and I think that could also spark offensively. Tyler Johnson on that right wing. I just don't want to take Cirelli out of the center spot there. Maybe him and Stamkos can sort of shift in terms of taking faceoffs on their strong hand side because Cirelli is a lefty, I believe. But I would start Steven Stamkos on the fourth line just to get him used to playing again. And then once he feels reacclimated, I would sub out Alex Killorn to the fourth line and put Stamkos, Cirelli, and Johnson together, making the Tampa Bay Lightning's top six forwards Palat, Point, Kucherov, Stamkos, Cirelli, Johnson. But it's all hypothetical at this point, ladies and gentlemen. We don't even know if the Tampa Bay Lightning are going to get Steven Stamkos back in these playoffs. But the question was asked on the Hockey Heartline, so I must answer with my thoughts, and that's exactly what I did with all of our questions asked on the Hockey Heartline today. Remember that number, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be taking your calls for the next episode of the Bubble Wrap presented by Coors Light when we get to the Hockey Heartline. Before we wrap up this edition of Bubble Wrap, let's go to our bandwagon rankings. This is what we've been doing throughout the playoffs so far, telling you who the best teams are to cheer for since the Pittsburgh Penguins got knocked out in the qualifying round. Now, there are only 4 teams left, so this won't be a very long conversation. I am happy to say that as a fan of the game, there's a reason to be happy with any 4 of these teams winning the Stanley Cup at this point. But I have to stick with the ranking system, and this is what we've come up with here on the bandwagon. In 4th place, the New York Islanders. They've been a great story so far, but they lack that necessarily sexy star power that some of the other clubs in front of them do. The Dallas Stars have turned their offensive deficiency into a strength in these playoffs. They've been a very exciting team so far, but the Tampa Bay Lightning chasing that Stanley Cup that has eluded them throughout the Stamkos era, the John Cooper era, with a chance to finally pull it off after they've come oh so close so many times. Something weird or injury-related has always gotten in their way in the past. Maybe not this year, but at number 1, we have the Vegas Golden Knights. I compare the Golden Knights to the boulder in an Indiana Jones movie. Once that thing gets rolling, you either run or get the heck out of the way because you aren't stopping them. They have had some games where their offense hasn't produced despite generating 40 shots in a game, having 30-plus scoring chances. But once again, if they start clicking, you just got to get out of the way. They're a good bandwagon to jump on, ladies and gentlemen. Also, if you look at those top 4, I don't want to say I did this on purpose, but there's a direct correlation to how many Stanley Cups those franchises have won or haven't won and where they stand on the bandwagon. Vegas looking for their first Stanley Cup in just their 3rd season of existence. Tampa Bay and Dallas have 1 ring on their respective fingers, and the New York Islanders won 4 consecutive Stanley Cups back in the 80s, but that was a long, long time ago. So there's a good story to be told with all 4 of these teams. So if you want to cheer for any of those 4 teams, I can't blame you. But those are some convenient bandwagon rankings that I've put together for you folks here on Bubble Wrap. Once again, not the order that I think the teams will win the Stanley Cup, but rather how I think you should cheer for these teams. But it's all up to you just as much as it's up to me. And it is now also up to me to end this edition of Bubble Wrap. It has been a fantastic time. Thank you so much for tuning in, ladies and gentlemen. We hope to see you again next week when we do another Bubble Wrap Wednesday, talking about what's going on in the conference finals. Who knows? We might even know what the Stanley Cup final looks like when we chat again next Wednesday. Also, our one-on-one interview with Barry Goers will be live at 7 p.m. tomorrow night, and you'll be able to watch the former Penguins defenseman on American Ninja Warrior on Monday night on NBC. I just threw a lot at you here at the end of the episode. I'll let it digest, let you ruminate in it. In the meantime, I'm going to sign off, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks again for watching this edition of Bubble Wrap presented by Coors Light. See you again next week.